My ex-husband brought his new bride to the reunion to flaunt their fertile marriage. Until I arrived with our triplets, he never knew about. He left me, humiliated me, and flaunted his fertile marriage while I was labeled barren. But he never knew I carried his children, triplets he would meet for the first time in a moment that would shatter his perfect world forever. Hey, beautiful souls, I'm your storyteller, James, and today I'm bringing you a journey of heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimate triumph that will touch your heart and leave you breathless. This is a story of strength, truth, and the unbreakable bond of a mother's love. As we dive into this tale, I promise you'll feel every emotion, every twist, and every powerful revelation. So stay with me until the very end. You won't regret it, I promise. Before we begin, let's take a moment to send our love and prayers into the world. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and repeat after me. May truth always shine in our lives. May strength and courage guide us through our darkest moments. May love protect and uplift the innocent. And may justice and peace find their way to every heart in need. If you feel this prayer in your heart, type Amen in the comments and let the positive energy flow. Maya stood in the center of the marble floor living room, a place once filled with laughter and warm mornings, now echoing with cold silence. Ethan's suitcases were already lined up near the door, perfectly stacked like the final insult in a marriage he had stopped caring about long ago. He didn't even look at her when he adjusted his cufflinks. Like the man who once memorized every detail of her smile, no longer recognized her at all. His presence felt like a storm cloud pretending to be calm. Her hands trembled, but she kept them behind her back. She would not let him see the way he was breaking her. Not today. Not again. Are you really doing this? Maya whispered. Her voice wavered, but the pain inside her felt like metal scraping bone. Ethan didn't answer. He simply sighed, slow and irritated, as if she were a stubborn employee refusing to accept her termination. He finally turned to face her, jaw tight, gaze hard enough to cut. I'm tired, Maya. Tired of waiting for something you can't give. His words landed like a slap. She felt her knees weaken, but she locked them in place, refusing to fall apart in front of him. You mean a child, she murmured. Ethan's silence confirmed it. He stepped closer, his cologne as familiar as the betrayal settling between them. You and I both know this marriage was built on the idea of a family, he said coldly. You failed to give me that. Her heart cracked. She had spent months crying in silence over every negative test, every doctor's sigh, every sleepless night wondering what was wrong with her. But hearing her husband throw those wounds in her face felt like someone ripping open her ribs. That's not fair, she whispered. But fairness had no place in Ethan's world. Power did. Image did. Control did. He continued, voice firm, emotionless. I can't keep living like this, ignoring my future, watching people pity us. He straightened his tie. I need a real family, Maya. A fertile one. The word fertile burned like acid, as if her worth began and ended with her womb. She had given up promotions, passions, and dreams for him, believing love meant sacrifice. And now he was discarding her like she was defective. She sucked in a shaky breath. Ethan, please, don't say things like that. But he wasn't done. He crossed his arms, gaze colder. They already talk about us, she frowned. Who? Everyone. The word landed like a dagger. He went on, each sentence sharper than the last. My co-workers ask why we don't have children yet. My family wonders what's wrong. Even the board members make jokes behind my back. Her heart squeezed painfully. I never asked for any of that, she whispered. No, he replied. But you caused it. Her breath stopped. He was blaming her for gossip she never heard, pressure she never created, wounds she never intended. She took a step back, trying to gather air. You know I've been trying. You know how hard it's been. I don't want to discuss this again, Ethan snapped. He turned away, waving his hand dismissively. You're not enough for me anymore, Maya, and I refuse to keep defending you. Her chest tightened as if someone had punched the air out of her lungs. Not enough. The words echoed in her head, each repetition heavier. So this is it, she whispered. He didn't hesitate. Yes. He picked up his phone, tapping casually, like this moment held no weight at all. The moment their future died. The moment he erased everything they once promised. Maya swallowed the sob, trying to escape. Is there someone else? His jaw twitched, a reaction too quick to hide. Her stomach dropped. There is, she whispered. You replaced me already. Ethan didn't deny it. And that silence. That silence was the harshest confirmation of all. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the weight of years collapse on her shoulders. The dinners she cooked, the late nights waiting for him, the dreams she held close, all crushed beneath the heel of his desire for a better wife. Ethan finally spoke, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeve. I'll have the papers sent. Sign them quietly, Maya. Don't make this difficult. Her lips trembled. Difficult? Ethan, you're shattering my life. He shrugged. Move on. Everyone does. Everyone. Except her. Because she wasn't everyone. She was the woman who had loved him with every fragile piece of her heart. He walked toward the door, paused, looked at her one last time with a mixture of annoyance and pity. You should have been able to give me a child. That's all I ever wanted. Her heart cracked open. Tears blurred her vision. But she stayed silent, even when he opened the door, even when he walked out without looking back, even when the click of the door sounded like her world collapsing. The moment he disappeared, Maya sank to the floor. Her sobs echoed through the empty room, raw and quiet, and full of years of held-in pain. She pressed her palm to her stomach, wishing she could tear the hurt out of her, wishing she had been enough, wishing he had loved her beyond her usefulness. Hours later, after tears had dried into salt on her cheeks, she forced herself up. The doctor's envelope still sat on the coffee table. She had picked it up before the argument, never imagining she'd open it alone. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it. Inside was the report from her latest exam. The doctor had insisted she come in earlier than expected. Something about hormone levels shifting. Something unusual. Maya inhaled slowly and slid the paper free. Her eyes scanned the page, blinking, then blinking again. Her pulse hammered loud in her ears. Her throat tightened. She read the words once more, just to be sure. Her breath caught, her vision blurred. Her heart stumbled in her chest. Pregnant. Not possible. Not after Ethan's accusations. Not after months of negative tests. Not after the divorce papers waiting on her doorstep. Pregnant. And then her gaze dropped lower. Her hands shook violently. Her knees nearly buckled. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Her eyes widened with disbelief, shock electrifying her entire body. 3 heartbeats. 3 triplets. Her tears spilled again, but for the first time they weren't born of pain. They were born of something new, something fierce, something life-changing, something Ethan never imagined. Maya staggered back, clutching the report to her chest, as her breath trembled out of her. She was carrying Ethan's triplets, and he had just left her forever. Maya sank into the leather chair, the report clutched tightly to her chest. Her fingers were numb, but her mind raced faster than her pulse. 3 heartbeats, Ethan's children. Her children. Alone in the apartment, yet the world felt unbearably loud. Each thump in her chest mirrored the thumps of 3 new lives she could scarcely believe existed. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Not sorrow this time, but a wild, uncontainable awe. She had no one to turn to, no one who could understand the storm raging inside her. Her phone lay on the counter, Ethan's contact still saved. She dared not call him. He had left, and every word from his mouth had cut too deeply. Yet a sliver of curiosity gnawed at her. Could he possibly know? Would he care? She shook her head, forcing herself to focus on the present. These were her children first, and she had to protect them from the shadows of their father's arrogance. The next morning she forced herself to the doctor's office, each step weighted with dread and disbelief. The sterile smell of antiseptic assaulted her senses, yet the familiar presence of Dr. Anwar calmed her slightly. Maya placed the report on the desk, hands still trembling. I'm pregnant," she said, voice barely a whisper. Dr. Anwar smiled gently, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that made her stomach twist. "Congratulations," he said, "but we need to talk about what we found." Maya's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He gestured for her to sit. "I ran additional tests after seeing the report," he began. "You're not carrying just one. You're carrying three." Her breath hitched, and a small, incredulous laugh escaped her lips. "Triplets," she repeated, as if saying it aloud could make it real. Dr. Anwar nodded gravely. "Yes, and there's more. Based on your history and the timing of conception, the father is likely Ethan." Maya froze. Her mind felt both paralyzed and alight with panic. Ethan. The man who had torn her world apart, the man who had mocked her inability to give him children. And now, he was the father of three. Her hands gripped the chair, knuckles white. It was a truth too heavy to carry, a truth too ironic, too cruelly poetic. I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice trembling. Dr. Anwar's eyes softened. "You have choices, Maya, but you have strength too. These children are alive and they need you." She nodded, swallowing hard, letting the doctor's words sink in. Strength. Yes. She had survived Ethan's cruelty before. She could survive this. For these three tiny lives she would endure anything. The following days passed in a haze of appointments, ultrasounds, and whispered fears. Each screen revealed the flicker of a tiny heartbeat, three separate rhythms filling her with awe and terror simultaneously. She memorized each motion, each tiny pulse, as if she could will them to safety with sheer attention. Ethan's absence was a hollow ache in the background, a shadow that refused to leave. Her friends tried to reach out, but she brushed them away politely, unwilling to share her secret with anyone who might speak it aloud. This was hers alone, her miracle, her defiance, her rebellion against everything Ethan had ever claimed. Nights were the hardest. Alone in her bed, she could feel the subtle kicks and twitches, and yet fear gnawed relentlessly at her mind. What if she couldn't do this alone? What if one of them didn't make it? The responsibility was enormous, and the thought of Ethan, who had discarded her so easily, haunted her still. Maya pressed her palm to her growing belly, murmuring promises to the little lives within. "I will protect you. No matter what, no one will hurt you. Not even him." Days blurred into weeks. Maya adjusted her life around appointments and vitamins, making a quiet home that could cradle her secret. She imagined their future constantly. The first cries, the first smiles, the chaos and joy of three children. Her heart both ached and soared at the thought. She began to prepare, mentally, emotionally, physically, for the journey ahead. She couldn't allow despair or fear to take root. During one particularly tense visit, Dr. Anwar studied her intently. "There's something you should know," he said softly. Maya's chest tightened. "What is it?" He pulled up the latest scan. "Everything looks normal so far, but one of the babies shows an early sign of a rare condition. It's too early to diagnose definitively, but we need to monitor closely." Maya's stomach dropped. She blinked rapidly, trying to absorb the words. A rare condition. Her mind screamed, but she clenched her teeth, forcing calm. I understand. What do we do next?" We watch and wait carefully, he said. Regular checkups, additional tests. But you must stay strong, Maya. Stress will not help any of you. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Strength. She reminded herself of that word often these days. She had survived Ethan's cruelty. She had endured public humiliation. She would survive this too. She had no other choice. These 3 lives depended on her unwavering courage. That night she returned home, still trembling from the doctor's words. She looked at the empty apartment, imagining the future laughter of 3 small children, a life she would build alone. And yet in her heart a shadow of fear lingered. What if she couldn't protect them? What if the fragile hope she clung to was not enough? She placed her hands on her belly and whispered promises into the quiet room. I will fight for you. Always. I won't let anything happen to you. Not him. Not anyone. Tears streamed down her face, but they were a different kind now. Determined, fiery, protective. She would not allow fear to paralyze her. These 3 tiny hearts were counting on her, and she would not fail them. The days that followed were a blur of ultrasounds, medical consultations, and long nights awake listening to the tiny flutters inside her. She began to feel a fierce attachment to each of the 3, even imagining their personalities, their tiny quirks, before they were born. The thought of raising them alone was terrifying, yet thrilling. A strange mix of anxiety and exhilaration coursed through her veins. Every kick, every tiny movement was a reminder of her purpose. She would be their shield, their protector, their world. And still, the shadow of that rare condition haunted her, a small flicker of worry she could not shake. Dr. Anwar's warnings echoed relentlessly in her mind. She would monitor, she would prepare, she would fight, and she would survive. For them. Maya's resolve hardened. She would not allow fear or uncertainty to rule this miracle growing inside her. Ethan had underestimated her. He had discarded her. But he could never take away what she carried, her secret, her power, her life force. 3 heartbeats against all odds. She whispered into the darkness of her apartment, You are mine, and I will never let anyone harm you. During the next ultrasound, Maya watched in horror as Dr. Anwar's brow furrowed, his lips tightening. One of the baby's heartbeat was irregular, early signs of a rare and serious condition that could change everything. Maya left the clinic with her mind spinning. Her hands were still pressed over her growing belly, feeling 3 tiny pulses that now defined the rhythm of her life. Every step on the city sidewalk reminded her that her world had shifted completely. Gone was the life she had planned with Ethan. Gone were quiet mornings with breakfast together, coffee in hand, casual laughter. Instead, there was a life that demanded courage, vigilance, and resilience. She returned to her small apartment, the space suddenly feeling simultaneously empty and full. Empty because Ethan had taken the warmth of their shared life, full because of the 3 lives moving inside her. Maya sank onto the couch, her fingers tracing the swell of her belly. 3 little hearts she would carry through everything. The thought ignited something fierce in her chest, a determination that no fear, no illness, no man could shake. The weeks that followed were a battle of wills. Morning sickness gripped her, fatigue pinned her to the bed, and yet she forced herself to plan, to prepare, to survive. She researched every precaution, every nutrient, every possible care for triplets. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford. Each night she listened to the tiny flutters, mapping their tiny movements, imagining their little fingers and toes. She whispered their names aloud, tentative, unsure, yet loving every syllable. Grocery stores became battlefields. She pushed a cart heavy with prenatal vitamins, protein-rich foods, and soft blankets, careful not to overexert herself. Every stranger who smiled or whispered about her belly ignited a mix of pride and anxiety. Her body was no longer just hers. It was a vessel of survival, hope, and defiance. Maya learned to move with caution, to sit, to rest, to breathe deeply. Each task, no matter how small, felt monumental. Work became a new challenge. She took on freelance design projects from home, her laptop perched on her lap while she rested against the couch. Her art reflected her new life, vivid, chaotic, yet beautifully precise. Even amidst exhaustion, she found herself thriving creatively. Her clients didn't know about the tiny lives growing within her, nor did they need to. This was hers alone, a secret fortress of strength she would guard fiercely. Meanwhile, Ethan's world moved in the opposite direction. News reached her through whispers and social media posts. He had remarried publicly, flaunting what the world perceived as a fertile marriage. The society pages celebrated the new bride in white silk gowns, her smile flawless, her pregnancy rumored or implied. Maya's stomach twisted with a mixture of anger, disbelief, and a strange twinge of vindication. He had displayed what he thought she lacked, parading it before the world. But the truth was hers to keep. Evenings were the hardest. She would sit alone, the city lights painting shadows on her walls, and imagine the life that should have been hers. Yet she never allowed despair to linger for long. Every tear shed was followed by resolve. She sketched nursery designs, planned feeding schedules, and read up on twin and triplet survival guides. Maya was transforming through necessity. The woman who had once been quiet, reserved, and dependent on Ethan now became a strategist, a protector, a mother in training. Her apartment slowly filled with the subtle signs of preparation. Stacked diapers in neat towers, tiny booties lined up, swaddling blankets folded with care. The walls, bare for months, now held sketches of imaginary cribs, mobiles, and toys she would one day hang above their little beds. Every item represented hope. Every careful detail was a promise she silently whispered to the 3 lives that had already claimed her heart. Days merged into weeks, each passing with careful monitoring and medical checkups. The rare condition seen in one of the triplets weighed heavily on her. She studied the scans with meticulous attention, memorizing every flicker, every heartbeat, every tiny movement. The uncertainty was exhausting, yet it also forged her resilience. Maya discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. Fear no longer dictated her actions. Determination did. Outside, the world continued as usual. Gossip about Ethan's new marriage spread like wildfire. Photographs of the elegant couple appeared in magazines, society pages, and online news. Maya refused to look, refusing to let the image of him flaunting another woman shake her resolve. He had shown the world his version of perfection, but he could never show the truth. 3 tiny lives growing inside her were the ultimate contradiction to his pride. Her friends reached out occasionally, offering support, yet she remained cautious. She did not yet trust anyone fully with the secret of her pregnancy. Not until the children were born, not until she could protect them from prying eyes. She answered calls politely, smiled when necessary, yet kept the walls of her heart guarded. The burden was hers, and hers alone, and she accepted it willingly. Even so, there were moments when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. She would wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, hands pressed to her belly, listening to the 3 steady, tiny rhythms. They became her anchors. No matter how weary she felt, no matter how uncertain the world seemed, those heartbeats reminded her why she endured, why she fought. For them, she would never falter. Work, home, doctors, and planning became a delicate dance. Each day was carefully orchestrated, yet unpredictable as the lives inside her grew. She learned to balance nourishment, rest, and activity with precision. Each step, each choice, each precaution carried weight. Failure was not an option. She could not allow fear or fatigue to endanger them. And still Ethan's shadow lingered, an unavoidable presence in her consciousness. Images of his public displays of new marital bliss haunted her moments of quiet, but she refused to let anger consume her entirely. It fueled her resolve instead. Every social post, every headline, every whispered rumor only strengthened her determination to protect and cherish her secret, to honor the lives growing within. One evening, as she returned from another exhausting appointment, her phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen, unfamiliar number, elegant font. The words made her pause. Her pulse quickened. The sender claimed an invitation, a prestigious social gathering, the kind where Ethan and his new wife would certainly appear. Her fingers hovered over the screen, unsure whether to ignore it or act. The risk was enormous. Exposure could destroy her carefully guarded secret. Yet the pull of confronting the man who had so callously discarded her was almost irresistible. Her heart raced as she stared at the message. The gala, a place of luxury, power, and society intrigue, would now be a stage where her hidden truth could challenge Ethan's carefully constructed lie. Maya's breath caught, a mixture of fear and excitement flooding her senses. The weight of her decision pressed down on her, yet underneath, a fire ignited. She would not let him define her life any longer. Not his lies, not his pride, not his new facade. She had 3 tiny lives growing inside her that depended on her courage. This was her chance, perhaps the first opportunity to reclaim a piece of herself. Maya stood by the window, city lights shimmering, thinking of the future she was now preparing to face. Her mind raced with possibilities, strategies, and contingencies. She felt the first faint movements of her triplets, as if they too understood the significance of what lay ahead. They were alive, strong, and powerful even in their tiny forms. And she, their mother, was ready to rise. The woman who had been broken by betrayal now stood taller, fiercer, more determined than ever. She would face the world. She would face Ethan. And she would do so on her own terms. Maya picked up her phone, staring at the invitation one more time. Her fingers curled around it as though she could draw strength from the paper itself. Her mind was a whirlwind of plans, possibilities, and unspoken promises. Her resolve hardened. She would go. She would show him that the woman he discarded had become unstoppable. 3 lives beat within her, and they were the proof of everything he had tried to deny. As Maya read the gala invitation again, her chest tightened with a mix of fear and determination. She realized the event would bring her face to face with Ethan and his new wife, and for the first time she could reveal the secret he had worked so hard to bury. Maya sat at her desk, the gala invitation still resting beside her, its elegant print a stark contrast to the storm swirling inside her. She pressed her palms against her temples, trying to steady the rapid rhythm of her thoughts. The idea of facing Ethan again was terrifying. The thought of revealing what he had denied all these years was exhilarating. But she had to be prepared, not just emotionally, but strategically. This was no longer just about confronting him. This was about securing the lives of the 3 beating hearts growing inside her. She opened her laptop, fingers trembling slightly as she sifted through digital folders she had kept meticulously over the past months. Medical reports, ultrasound scans, prenatal care records, all neatly labeled, all ready. Every heartbeat documented, every movement recorded, every anomaly tracked. This was her armor. Every piece of paper, every test result, was a shield against the lies Ethan had built around himself. Maya's gaze fell on the ultrasound images. 3 tiny bodies, perfectly formed, each one distinct yet undeniably hers, and undeniably Ethan's. Her heart clenched at the reality. It was almost cruelly poetic. The man who had accused her of failure was in fact the father of 3 children, each one a testament to what he had denied. Her fingers traced the shapes of their tiny heads on the glossy images, memorizing every curve, every shadow. She whispered to them softly, "You are strong. You are safe. I will protect you, no matter what." She printed copies of every medical record, stacking them carefully in folders labeled with each child's name. A meticulous plan formed in her mind. This was more than preparation. It was strategy. When she entered that gala, she would not be a fragile, betrayed woman. She would be armed with truth, armed with proof, armed with life itself, and she would not hesitate to wield it. Hours passed as she worked, her small apartment filled with quiet determination. She compared scans, noting how each child's features already mirrored Ethan's striking traits. Blue eyes hinted at his, tiny noses shaped like his, delicate fingers curling in ways she remembered from his hands. It was a bitter sweetness that both pained her and strengthened her resolve. These children were his legacy, whether he acknowledged it or not. And he would see it. He would know the truth. Maya set aside a folder marked Critical Health Notes and reviewed it carefully. One of the triplets had shown subtle signs during their latest scan, something that could not be ignored. Her chest tightened. She had prepared for obstacles, but the fragility of one child's health brought a weight unlike any other. It was a test she could not afford to fail. Every decision mattered. Every step had consequences. Her phone vibrated, snapping her from the spiral of worry. A message flashed, a reminder of the gala date, elegant yet foreboding. She stared at it for a long moment, fingers hovering over the screen. The world would see her in weeks, but she needed to be ready now. She could not rely on luck or chance. She had to be deliberate. She had to be precise. Her plan needed to be flawless. The next morning, Maya met with Dr. Anwar again, the weight of the past scans heavy in both their minds. He reviewed the files, his expression serious but empathetic. "Everything looks stable for now," he said, "but you must be vigilant. The triplets are healthy, but complications can arise quickly, especially with one of them showing early signs of a condition." Maya nodded, committing every word to memory. She asked questions about treatment, about monitoring, about how to respond in emergencies. Every answer was a thread she wove into her growing tapestry of readiness. She spent the following days gathering additional documentation, lab reports, DNA samples, hospital records, all meticulously organized. She even arranged for duplicate copies, stored securely in different locations. No one would touch her plan. No one would have the opportunity to manipulate the truth. The children's lives, their identities, their safety, everything rested in her hands, and she would not falter. Evenings were spent planning logistics, transportation to the gala, timing, attire, contingencies for unforeseen interruptions. She researched every detail, learning the habits and social circles of Ethan and his new wife. Every scrap of knowledge became ammunition, every whisper of gossip a potential advantage. Maya's focus was absolute. No distraction, no fear, no hesitation would be allowed to weaken her. Her apartment became a command center. Folders and charts covered every surface. Screens displayed scans and reports. Her notes littered the floor in neat rows. She studied them relentlessly, memorizing each signature, each result, each piece of proof that could expose Ethan's lies. Her mind worked tirelessly, methodically, shaping strategy from chaos. Even her exhaustion became fuel. Every moment she spent preparing was a step closer to reclaiming control over her life and her children's futures. The nights, however, brought quiet moments of fear. She pressed her palm to her belly, feeling the three tiny forms wriggle and stretch. "You are safe with me," she whispered. But the memory of Dr. Anwar's caution weighed on her. One of them, fragile, vulnerable, could require extraordinary care, a marrow donor, a rare procedure, life or death. The thought gnawed at her relentlessly. Maya's determination only deepened. She knew she had to plan for every possibility. She began researching treatments, medical specialists, and donor procedures. She contacted trusted professionals, asking questions carefully, ensuring confidentiality. Every step she took was deliberate. Every piece of information, a shield. The children's survival depended on her vigilance, their future on her courage. The blueprints of her plan were complete. The children's health meticulously monitored, every medical document verified, every proof of paternity undeniable. Her path to the gala was now more than attendance. It was preparation for revelation. She would not arrive vulnerable. She would arrive formidable, armed with truth, and shielded by the very lives Ethan refused to acknowledge. And yet, the thought of her fragile child lingered like a shadow. No matter how much strategy she deployed, some elements were beyond her control. The condition, subtle yet threatening, was a ticking clock she could not ignore. She could prepare for exposure, for confrontation, for shame, for vindication, but not fully for the vulnerability of life itself. This uncertainty fueled her meticulousness. Every folder, every scan, every note was a layer of protection. Every decision, every step, a promise to the three tiny hearts beating within her. Maya leaned back in her chair, breathing slowly, counting each pulse, each movement, each hint of life. She imagined the moment she would walk into the gala, truth in hand, the realization of Ethan's face when confronted with undeniable proof. She shivered at the thought, half fear, half exhilaration. This was the first step of her triumph, the first act in reclaiming what had been stolen from her. The week moved forward in a tense rhythm. Appointments, preparations, and planning consumed her every waking hour. She trained herself to anticipate potential complications, rehearsed conversations, envisioned reactions. Her focus sharpened to an almost unbearable edge. She would not stumble. She would not falter. She could not. Maya reviewed the DNA reports for the 100th time, marveling at the unmistakable resemblance of her children to Ethan. Blue eyes, sharp features, subtle curves of the lips and nose, each detail a reminder of both her triumph and his inevitable confrontation with reality. This evidence, once revealed, would unravel the carefully constructed facade he presented to the world, and she would be the one holding the key. Late one night, as she finished organizing her documents, her phone buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Anwar. She opened it, heart tightening at the words. He instructed her to come in immediately, concern evident even in text. Maya's pulse quickened. She didn't hesitate. She knew this could not wait. At the clinic, Dr. Anwar's face was grave. He took a deep breath before speaking. Maya, your son may soon need a marrow donor. If we don't act quickly, it could be life-threatening. The night air outside the gala was crisp, carrying the faint hum of city lights and distant traffic. Maya took a deep breath, her hands resting protectively over the swell of her belly. Inside her, three tiny hearts beat with life, determination, and a stubborn insistence to survive. They were her truth, her power, her unspoken victory over everything Ethan had claimed she could never give him. The grand doors of the ballroom gleamed, reflecting the chandelier lights like stars captured indoors. Guests in glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos moved with the casual arrogance of wealth and influence. The air was thick with perfume, cologne, and the invisible hum of status and rivalry. Maya's heels clicked against the marble floor, each step deliberate, measured, purposeful. She could feel the weight of countless eyes, though she knew no one yet realized the storm she carried within her. Her gown, a deep emerald green, clung to her form with elegance and understated power. It was designed not to hide her, but to announce her presence, to command attention without shouting. She clutched the edges of her shawl lightly, feeling the subtle shifts of the triplets inside her. A gentle reminder. She was never alone. 3 hearts, small but mighty, beating in synchrony with her own. The orchestra swelled inside the ballroom, violins and piano weaving a melody that seemed oblivious to the tension building beneath the crystal chandeliers. Ethan was there, as she had expected, standing tall and unbending in a sharp black tuxedo, his jaw firm, his blue eyes scanning the room with arrogance. Beside him, his new wife glowed with the calculated poise of a woman who believed she had conquered the world. Maya's stomach tightened, not with fear but with purpose. Tonight, she would unveil the truth he had hidden for years. She moved further into the crowd, noting the subtle shifts in attention. Eyes followed her with curiosity, admiration, and, in some corners, dismissive indifference. She ignored them all. The world's opinions no longer defined her. She was a mother, a protector, and a force to be reckoned with. Ethan's gaze finally landed on her, and the change was immediate. The confident composure he had worn like armor faltered. His blue eyes widened, his lips parting slightly as he took in the sight of her, and the subtle swell of life she carried. For a fraction of a second he looked genuinely startled. A momentary crack in his polished exterior, gone too quickly to be believable to anyone but Maya. She felt the tiniest flutter of satisfaction. Not revenge, not spite, but the undeniable thrill of truth arriving unannounced, unstoppable. 3 lives within her, undeniable and irrefutable, standing as evidence against the lies he had so carefully constructed. She held her posture, her chin lifted, and walked forward with measured grace, letting the silence build around her. Conversations faltered. Champagne glasses paused mid-air. The room froze, though few understood why. Ethan stepped forward slightly, as if to intercept, to assert control, to remind her, and everyone, that he still ruled this space. But Maya ignored him, her eyes scanning the crowd and finding her allies in staff, in subtle nods, in the whispers of those who knew more than they let on. Her presence was her statement, not loud, not ostentatious, powerful in its quiet defiance. Her triplets stirred, a faint, imperceptible movement beneath the fabric of her gown. She pressed a hand gently to her belly, feeling their tiny forms shift, as if encouraging her forward. This was more than an entrance. It was a declaration, a statement of existence, of life and truth, triumphing over arrogance and denial. The new wife, radiant in silk and diamonds, glanced at her with a practiced smile, one designed to intimidate and charm simultaneously. But Maya did not flinch. She had endured humiliation, she had endured betrayal, and she had endured being cast aside. Tonight she carried the truth with her. Whispers began to circulate as staff exchanged. Glances. "Isn't that Maya? She's pregnant. Triplets, I think." The words, soft and careful, floated through the room like sparks. Small at first, almost unnoticed. But sparks have a way of igniting fires. Ethan's face shifted further, white washing over the confident tan of his skin. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. The crowd sensed the tension, the anomaly, the ripple in the fabric of their carefully orchestrated evening. Maya walked past, eyes level with his, acknowledging him without fear, without hesitation. The truth was now physically present, embodied, undeniable. Her steps carried her through the room, past crystal chandeliers and polished marble, each stride a testament to her resolve. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Champagne was forgotten. The orchestra continued, but the notes seemed to quiver in anticipation. She reached a vantage point near the center, where she could see him fully. Ethan, frozen in disbelief, and his new wife, radiant yet suddenly uncertain. Staff moved quietly behind the scenes, whispering fragments of her story to each other. Maya listened without turning. Every hushed comment, every glance, every stolen reaction fed the growing tension in the room. The lies Ethan had built around his pride and his new marriage were beginning to crack. Ethan's new wife tilted her head, curiosity mingling with suspicion. She caught snippets of conversation, a comment about her infertility, a murmur of disbelief that this woman, whom everyone assumed powerless, carried life, his life. Her perfectly painted lips parted slightly. A flicker of doubt passed through her eyes. Could everything she believed be false? Had she been deceived by the man she trusted most? Maya's heart beat steadily, but her mind was alive with strategy. She observed his expressions, the micro-movements of his posture, the way he swallowed when whispers reached his ears. This was the culmination of months of careful preparation. Every folder of documents, every medical record, every test result had been meticulously gathered for this moment. She would not allow him to regain control. Not now, not ever. The crowd continued to murmur, the tension rising like a tide about to break. Eyes followed her silently. She could feel the power shift subtly in the room. Ethan, despite his wealth, his arrogance, his carefully cultivated persona, was suddenly vulnerable. The proof of his deception walked among them, alive, breathing, undeniable. Maya's gaze met his again, unwavering, and a quiet thrill surged through her. This confrontation was hers to command. She was no longer the abandoned, betrayed woman from months ago. She had grown stronger, wiser, more determined. The triplets within her, tiny and potent, were extensions of that strength. As the evening progressed, subtle glances and whispers amplified. Staff members exchanged hurried comments about her pregnancy and the resemblance of the children to Ethan. The new wife's confidence faltered with every hushed remark she overheard. Suspicion crept into her posture, into the set of her shoulders, into the way her smile wavered. For the first time, doubt had entered the carefully curated bubble Ethan had constructed. Maya moved like a shadow among the glittering attendees. Every gesture, every glance, every measured breath carried intent. She was no longer just a guest. She was a revelation, an unstoppable force cloaked in emerald silk and unwavering resolve. The room felt the shift, though few understood why. Power had changed hands quietly, invisibly, irreversibly. Her eyes found Ethan again. He struggled to maintain composure. He was a man caught between disbelief and panic, realizing for the first time that the truth had arrived without permission, unmasked and undeniable. Maya allowed herself a small, private smile. Not victory yet, but the first ripple in the foundation of his lies had formed. The whispers continued to grow, spreading to corners of the room where only servants or distant acquaintances lingered. The new wife, isolated in her uncertainty, began to listen carefully. She caught fragments. Infertility, triplets, her children, his. Her perfectly controlled expression faltered. The subtle unraveling had begun. Maya's gaze swept across the crowd. Every detail mattered. Every movement of Ethan, every flicker of doubt in his new wife's eyes, every whispered comment in the corners, all part of the unfolding drama she had orchestrated in her mind for months. She pressed a hand gently to her belly, feeling the tiny movements of her children as if they too understood the magnitude of the moment. The new wife paused mid-conversation, her eyes wide, lips trembling slightly, as she caught staff whispering about Maya's infertility. Suddenly, a seed of doubt about Ethan's honesty began to take root in her mind. The whispers had grown to murmurs, and the murmurs had begun to ripple across the ballroom like a wave of unease. Maya's eyes scanned the crowd, taking in every expression, every subtle gesture, every stolen glance toward her and her unborn children. Ethan stood rigid, his smile forced, his jaw tight, as he tried to maintain the illusion of control. But the illusion was cracking. Maya's hands tightened over the envelope she carried. Inside were the documents she had spent months preparing, the DNA tests, medical records, treatment logs, every shred of evidence that proved the undeniable truth. The truth he had worked so hard to hide, the truth he had denied, and the truth that now stood in the center of this glittering room, alive and unyielding. She approached him slowly, deliberately, letting the room feel her presence, letting the tension build with each measured step. He noticed her too late. By the time he realized what she held, the damage was already unfolding in his mind. He opened his mouth to speak, to assert dominance, to deny, but no words came. Maya stopped before him, her gaze unflinching, her voice calm but cutting. "Ethan," she said softly, but loud enough for the nearest guests to hear, "I believe it's time you saw the truth." She opened the envelope and spread the documents across a nearby table, letting the room's light illuminate them. DNA reports lay side by side, the letters and numbers stark and clear. Medical records detailed the treatments he had undergone in secret, the lies he had told to cover his own infertility. Every signature, every date, every laboratory confirmation spelled out what she had known all along. He was the one who could not father children, not her. The guests began to notice, leaning in, murmuring amongst themselves. The air felt thick, charged, as if electricity had suddenly entered the ballroom. Ethan's new wife's confident smile faltered. Her eyes widened as she scanned the documents, taking in each revelation with growing horror. Maya's voice rang out again, steady and deliberate. "I kept these documents for the sake of truth and protection. Your arrogance, your lies. They end tonight." Ethan's fists clenched, his knuckles white against his tuxedo. He tried to maintain composure, but his blue eyes betrayed panic, disbelief, and anger all at once. The new wife's gaze shifted to him, searching for denial, explanation, anything to reassure herself. But Ethan could not speak. There was no excuse, no lie that could withstand this evidence. The facade he had built over years crumbled in front of an audience that could no longer be deceived. Maya continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "These children, the ones you claim are impossible for me to bear, are yours. Every test proves it. And the one you cast aside, claiming I was unfit, has grown strong, resilient, and protected by the truth." She glanced down at her belly, feeling the 3 tiny lives within her shift, as if affirming her words. The crowd watched in silent awe, the tension palpable, every eye glued to the scene unfolding. Ethan's new wife stepped back, her confidence shattered, replaced by disbelief and rising fury. She felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely unprepared for the revelation. Maya had one more card to play, one more truth to reveal. She reached for another envelope, smaller, more precise, containing documents she had obtained from a trusted source. Ethan's office files, forgeries, falsifications, and medical forms altered to protect his ego. The moment she placed them on the table, gasps rippled through the crowd. The new wife leaned closer, her eyes scanning the documents, piecing together the deceit that had been hidden from her. She realized she had been living in a carefully constructed lie. Her entire marriage, her trust, her pride, based on a falsity created by the very man she had chosen to love. Shock and anger contorted her expression, her carefully painted mask slipping. Ethan's face was ashen, veins standing out on his forehead as he tried to explain, to deny, to reclaim control. But Maya ignored him, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. The DNA, the medical treatments, the forged documents, all undeniable. He had been unmasked, and the public spectacle amplified every word, every piece of proof. Staff members whispered among themselves, their voices barely audible but sharp enough for the new wife to overhear. "She lied." "No, she wasn't lying. He was." The new wife's eyes darted to Ethan, her trust evaporating like smoke. For the first time, doubt had settled firmly in her mind. Could she have been deceived by the man she believed she knew? Maya stood tall, her posture regal, commanding, unyielding. She was no longer the abandoned, betrayed woman from months ago. She was a mother, a warrior, a bearer of truth, and nothing in the room could diminish her power. Ethan tried to speak again, his voice low and trembling, but Maya cut him off. You hid the truth, Ethan. You cast me aside. You flaunted lies to the world. But here, in front of everyone, the truth can no longer be hidden. Guests murmured, some nodding in quiet admiration, others shocked by the audacity and precision of her confrontation. The new wife's hands trembled as she clutched her evening clutch, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. She had been blindsided, unprepared, and now faced a reality she could neither deny nor ignore. Maya's gaze softened slightly as she pressed a hand to her belly. This is why I stayed silent until I was ready. Not out of fear, but out of protection. For them. For our children. The air in the ballroom was electric, charged with the tension of revelation and the weight of undeniable truth. Ethan's attempts at control faltered completely. His new wife's disbelief turned into fury, her whispered questions sharp and pointed. You lied to me. All this time? It was you? Ethan's shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of exposure pressing down, crushing the pride he had carried so carefully. Maya's strategy was complete. She had revealed the DNA, the secret treatments, the forgeries, all in a controlled, public display that left no room for denial. The room was watching, absorbing, judging. Ethan was stripped bare before the world, powerless to manipulate the narrative any longer. His empire of lies had begun to crumble, and yet, even in the midst of victory, Maya could not ignore the fragility of the lives she carried. The sickly child, the one who had shown early signs of a rare condition, demanded attention beyond public confrontation. Her thoughts shifted, her resolve hardening further. Truth had been unveiled, yes, but survival was still the ultimate challenge. Maya's eyes scanned the room, catching subtle glances from concerned staff and silent onlookers. The moment of reckoning was still ahead. She had prepared for exposure, for confrontation, for humiliation, but not fully for what was coming next. The tension in the room escalated, a silent storm gathering at the edges of the gala. Even the music seemed to falter, the notes trembling in tandem with the rising anxiety. Maya's heart raced, but she remained composed, knowing that the next moment could change everything yet again. Just as a murmur spread through the crowd about the revealed documents, a sudden, sharp cry pierced the room. Maya's heart leapt. She looked down, her worst fear realized. Her sick son had collapsed in her arms, and panic rippled through the gala. Chaos erupted as the gala attendees scattered, leaving a trail of murmurs, whispers, and startled gasps. Maya's heart pounded, her hands clutching her collapsing son, every heartbeat of the tiny body trembling under her touch. The medics arrived swiftly, their expressions professional yet laced with urgency as they guided her through the crowd and toward the waiting ambulance. Ethan followed, frozen in a haze of panic and disbelief, his perfectly tailored tuxedo suddenly irrelevant. The city lights blurred outside the ambulance windows, a whirlwind of red and gold streaking past. Maya held her son tightly, whispering softly to calm him, to calm herself. Hold on, my love. We're almost there. I promise. The small, fragile body quivered, tiny fingers gripping her sleeve as though aware of the stakes, as though sensing the magnitude of the moment. At the hospital, the emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos. Doctors and nurses moved with precision, machines beeped and whirred, and the fluorescent lights cast a clinical glow over the scene. Maya felt an icy knot of fear tighten in her chest. Time seemed to stretch, each second both eternal and fleeting. Her mind raced with thoughts of survival, of the fragile thread between life and death. of the truth she had fought to wield only moments ago. Dr. Anwar appeared at her side, calm yet serious. "Maya," he said softly, though his eyes carried the weight of urgency. "He needs a bone marrow transplant immediately. Without a compatible donor, we could lose him." Maya's breath hitched. She looked down at her son, his small face pale, sweat glistening on his forehead. 3 lives rested within her belly, but one, so delicate, so dependent, needed help beyond what she could give naturally. The words hung heavy, a brutal reminder that truth alone could not protect life. Ethan stepped closer, his usual arrogance gone, replaced with something raw, unguarded, almost desperate. "Is there anyone?" he asked, voice tight, strained, lacking the practiced confidence he always wore. Dr. Anwar glanced between them, measuring, calculating. Then he said something that struck Maya like lightning. "The only compatible donor is him, Ethan." Maya froze, disbelief washing over her in a wave of anger, fear, and reluctant relief. Ethan's gaze met hers, a flicker of shock in his blue eyes, as though the universe had turned the tables in a way he could not manipulate. The room seemed to narrow, the machines, the lights, the beeping, all fading into the tension between them. Her hands were still pressed over her. Son, and for the first time she saw him, the man who had abandoned her, who had lied, who had flaunted arrogance, reduced to one choice. "Me?" he breathed, voice trembling. Dr. Anwar nodded solemnly. "Yes, you are the only match. We need your bone marrow to save him." A heavy silence fell. Maya's mind raced, heart pounding with the implications. The same man who had once threatened her, mocked her, denied her, was now the only lifeline for the fragile life in her arms. Her son's life rested in his hands, and yet, for all the fury and betrayal she felt, she could not ignore the truth of necessity. Ethan's jaw tightened, fists clenching involuntarily. "Fine," he said at last, though the words sounded hollow, strained, and reluctant. "I'll do it, but on one condition." Maya's head lifted sharply, eyes narrowing. "What condition?" she asked, her voice steady despite the torrent of emotions swirling within her. Ethan took a deep breath, his gaze flicking to his new wife, to the room, then back to her. "You have to forgive me." The words hung like a guillotine, poised over her chest, heavy and suffocating. Maya's mind reeled. Forgive him. After the humiliation, the betrayal, the lies, the destruction of months of her life. Her heart screamed against the very notion, yet here was the man who could save her son, offering his only lifeline, but demanding her grace in exchange. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her son closer. His tiny chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, fragile and vulnerable. She swallowed the lump in her throat, every ounce of maternal instinct warring with the raw, burning anger she still carried. The life of her child, the life she had protected for months against every obstacle, now hung by the slender thread of a man's demand. Dr. Anwar stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Maya, we don't have time for hesitation. The transplant must be done immediately. He's the only match. If we delay—" Maya's heart clenched at the unspoken threat. Her mind raced, weighing hatred, pride, and love against necessity, survival, and truth. She looked at Ethan, his face pale, tense, finally stripped of the arrogance he had cloaked himself in for years. Ethan's new wife hovered near the doorway, her expression unreadable, a mixture of anger, disbelief, and fear. Her world was collapsing, the revelations at the gala, the lies, and now this desperate human vulnerability laid bare. She took a step back, unsure whether to intervene, to accuse, or simply to retreat into denial. Maya's gaze shifted to her son. The tiny, fragile life trembling in her arms was all that mattered. Everything else, the betrayal, the humiliation, the lies, faded in the face of necessity. Her pulse raced, fear and determination merging into a singular focus. She could endure, she could protect, she could decide. Ethan's voice broke the silence, low and uncertain. I, I'll do it, but you have to forgive me. That's the only way I'll go through with this. Maya's hands shook slightly. Forgive him? Could she? Would she? But there was no time for the luxury of moral debate. Her son's life demanded action. Her son's life demanded courage. She pressed a finger lightly to her lips, thinking, calculating, feeling the tiny pulse of her child. The room seemed to hold its breath, the tension almost unbearable. Dr. Anwar and the medical team readied themselves for the procedure. Machines beeped, lights reflected, the sterile environment a sharp contrast to the storm of emotions surrounding them. Every heartbeat, every second, mattered. Maya finally nodded, a quiet, decisive motion. Ethan exhaled, a mixture of relief and apprehension, as he followed the medical team's instructions. The gravity of the situation pressed down, heavy, inescapable. No words could alter the necessity. No pride could outweigh survival. And yet, her heart throbbed with the complex, painful web of anger, betrayal, and reluctant trust. Her son lay fragile in the incubator, eyes barely open, tiny chest rising and falling unevenly. Maya's mind catalogued every risk, every possibility, every outcome. She watched Ethan cooperate with the procedure, sterile gloves, sterile tools, sterile determination. A man who had once caused so much pain was now the only hope. The irony was sharp, almost cruel. Minutes stretched into eternity. The hum of machines filled the room, punctuated by soft instructions from doctors. Maya whispered softly, soothing her child, speaking words of encouragement, strength, and love. Her gaze flicked repeatedly to Ethan, assessing every movement, every reaction. There was tension, there was fear, there was responsibility, but beneath it all, there was life. Time moved slowly, deliberately. Every second mattered, every pulse, every tiny shiver, every breath measured against the enormity of the moment. Maya's hands clenched slightly, and she whispered again, "Hold on. Just hold on." Her voice trembled, but it carried power, hope, and determination. The medical team moved efficiently, a quiet storm of precision and focus. Ethan followed instructions, cooperating fully, the magnitude of the situation stripping away all pretense, all arrogance, all facade. The room was tense, silent, but for the soft beeps of monitors and the low murmur of doctors. Maya's heart raced, her eyes never leaving her son, never leaving the fragile thread of life that now depended on this moment. As the procedure neared completion, Ethan's eyes met Maya's, searching, pleading, and raw with unspoken need. "I'll do this, but only if you forgive me." Maya's eyes held Ethan's, searching, calculating, weighing every ounce of sincerity in his plea. The room hummed with sterile machines, the soft beeping a reminder that life hung by a fragile thread. Her hands rested lightly on the incubator, feeling the small, steady pulse of her child. Every breath, every beat, was a triumph over months of struggle, deception, and betrayal. Ethan's face was pale, etched with fatigue, tension, and a vulnerability Maya had never imagined she would see. The arrogance he had worn like armor for years was stripped away, leaving only a man confronted with his own failings and the stark consequences of his lies. He waited, eyes searching hers, silently begging for absolution, for something he had long refused to earn. Maya drew in a slow breath, steadying the torrent of emotions raging inside her. Anger, betrayal, exhaustion, they all collided with the fragile, undeniable need to save her child. Her voice was steady but soft. "I will not forgive you because you ask it. I forgive only because it is the right thing, for him, for this child, for the truth." Ethan exhaled sharply, a mixture of relief, guilt, and the faintest glimmer of hope. The medical team moved with swift efficiency, preparing for the marrow transplant with meticulous precision. Maya watched every step, noting the care, the urgency, the delicate choreography of life-saving intervention. She felt the triplets stir within her, tiny movements like whispers of encouragement, as if they too understood the gravity of the moment. The transplant began. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he extended them, placing trust in sterile instruments and medical expertise. Maya's heart raced with each measured motion, each careful extraction, each pulse monitored and recorded. The child's body, small and fragile, responded as the infusion began, the delicate threads of life connecting across blood, hope, and necessity. Time moved slowly. Seconds stretched into minutes that felt like hours. Maya whispered softly to her child, words of reassurance, love, and courage. She traced her fingers lightly over the incubator, feeling the faint warmth, the faint strength, the faint life returning with each passing moment. Ethan's face mirrored hers, a mixture of concentration, anxiety, and the dawning realization of responsibility. Outside the sterile bubble of the hospital, the world continued, oblivious to the delicate miracle unfolding within these walls. Inside, every heartbeat, every shiver, every subtle movement was magnified, cherished, and feared. The medical team communicated in quiet tones, notes of progress and concern threading through the hum of machinery. Maya's chest tightened with each update, yet her focus remained unwavering. Finally, the critical moment passed. The child's vital signs stabilized, a wave of relief washing over the room like a breath of fresh air. Maya sank slightly, exhaustion hitting her in a tidal wave, but she held on, still wary, still vigilant. Ethan exhaled, a long, shuddering release that carried months of fear, guilt, and unspoken remorse. The weight of his actions, the consequences of his deception, pressed down upon him, unrelenting, unyielding. Maya's gaze softened as she watched him, the man who had once caused her immense pain, now reduced to humanity. "Your son is stable," Dr. Anwar said quietly, offering a nod of reassurance. Maya exhaled, a long, measured release of tension, relief, and triumph. The life she had fought to protect was secure for now, and truth had finally triumphed. The new wife arrived silently, her expression unreadable. Shock, anger, betrayal, and disbelief collided in her eyes. The facade of her perfect life had crumbled entirely, leaving her exposed to the full weight of Ethan's lies. She glanced at the documents, the procedures, the child, and the woman who had outlasted every deception. For the first time, she realized her world had been built on fragile, false foundations. Ethan sat beside Maya, silent, still processing the enormity of the events. Pride, arrogance, control, all had been stripped away in one public revelation and one life-saving act. The cost of his redemption had been immense: trust, reputation, marriage, and the humbling knowledge of vulnerability. Yet he had acted. Yet he had chosen life over ego, responsibility over denial. Maya's gaze fell on the triplets, tiny but alive, protected, resilient. The future they represented was bright, though fragile. Every challenge, every betrayal, every moment of hardship had led to this moment. Truth victorious, life preserved, and injustice exposed. Her strength, her resolve, her unyielding determination had carried them through, and she had emerged unbroken. Ethan's eyes met hers again, no words necessary, but a silent acknowledgement passing between them. He had learned the weight of his arrogance, the consequences of deception, and the value of truth. Redemption had come at a price, but it had come nonetheless. The medical team worked methodically, ensuring the child remained stable, monitoring the infusion and the vital signs, the fragile thread of life that now connected father and son in a way that transcended pride and resentment. Maya's hands rested lightly on the incubator, her heart steadying, her mind focused on the lives she carried and the lives she had saved. The room, once tense and chaotic, now hummed with quiet vigilance and a cautious relief. Outside the hospital, the world continued unaware of the silent victory achieved within these walls. Inside, history had shifted, lives had been saved, and the truth had reshaped destiny. Maya's gaze lingered on Ethan, her eyes holding the knowledge that he had learned his lessons. But her forgiveness was measured, careful, tempered by experience and strength. Life had triumphed, but trust would always be earned, never demanded. Hours later, the child slept peacefully, stabilized, safe. The triplets within Maya stirred gently, as if sensing the victory, the safety, the promise of tomorrow. Ethan remained quietly at her side, humbled, reflective, aware of the fragility of everything he had once taken for granted. The new wife had departed silently, her world forever altered, the illusion of her perfect life shattered irrevocably. Maya rose, exhaustion heavy in her limbs, but pride steady in her chest. She cradled her child, whispering softly, "You are safe, you are loved, and you are mine." Her strength, her perseverance, and her unwavering resolve had carried them all through the storm. The truth had been revealed, life had been saved, and justice, in its own way, had been served. The sun began to rise, casting soft light across the hospital room. Maya's gaze fell on Ethan, silent acknowledgement passing between them. No words could undo the past, no apology could erase betrayal. But a fragile understanding had been forged in the crucible of truth and necessity. The triplets stirred, tiny hands reaching, small but full of life, a testament to resilience, courage, and maternal love. Maya smiled softly, a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and quiet triumph. She had survived betrayal, exposure, and immense challenge. Her children had survived. The truth had survived. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel, to recognize the power she held, not through wealth or status, but through life, love, and unshakable resolve. Ethan remained silent, humbled, reflective, aware that the world had shifted around him irrevocably. He had lost wealth, trust, reputation, and control, but he had preserved life, the ultimate act of redemption. Maya watched him quietly, knowing that his redemption was costly, incomplete, and entirely dependent on her forgiveness, something she had given not lightly, but necessarily. The hospital room was quiet now, filled with the subtle hum of machines, the soft breathing of the child, and the gentle stirrings of the triplets. Life continued, fragile, precious, and powerful. Maya's hands rested over her children, her heart steady, her mind clear. She had survived, endured, and prevailed. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the lives saved, the truth revealed, and the justice quietly served. Inside, history had shifted, relationships had changed, and lives had been irrevocably transformed. Maya held her child, whispered promises to the future, and let herself feel the quiet satisfaction of victory. The storm had passed. As Maya finally allowed herself a moment of peace, a subtle knock echoed at the door. A small, elegant package sat on the threshold, unmarked, untouched by anyone. Inside, a single note in Ethan's handwriting. "I tried to do right. This is for you, for them, even if I remain unseen." The weight of his absence and the mystery of the gift lingered, a quiet reminder that some consequences and emotions never fully fade,